Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools has been the place to shop for your industrial needs for over 20 years. Carrying the tools you need to get the job done from the brands you can trust, Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools has you covered. Brands like Milwaukee Tool, established in 1924 and on display in our Milwaukee Red Zone, the largest red zone in Winnipeg. With construction workers and tradespeople in mind, Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools is your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. So come on down to our Winnipeg store location today, located on 1557 King Edward Street in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And good morning, Buffaloes Nation, Pilot Mound Hockey Academy fans, and to another edition of the Buffaloes podcast here on G Show Productions on gshow.ca. I'm your host, Graham the G Show Forsyth. We're brought to you by Terrico Goaltenders, Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools, of course, the commercial that you saw to start off this episode, as well as Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia. We got a great show in store for you all today. Fellas over from Pilot Mound joining us, and as always, Gordie Tumilson. To start things off in this episode this time around, we start off with some female U18 prep goaltender interviews last week, and we're going to be sticking with having guests from the U18 female prep squad joining us, this time on their coaching side, and Kirt Fortney making his return to the podcast. Here's the guest for episode 20 here in season 2. Of course, Kirt been a guest on this show many times before. Going to be great to reconnect with him. But before we get into anything, just want to mention that, one sec, as we'll show you that later as we get our formatting figured out and everything. During this interview with Gordie Tumilson as the marketing director, goaltending coach, a man of many hats over at Pilot Mound Hockey Academy, joining the show next year to talk about the past weekend of action for the teams that were all in action, playing against the opponents they played against, and much more here on this edition of the Buffaloes podcast on G Show Productions on gshow.ca, your home for Pilot Mound Hockey Academy coverage here in the province of Manitoba. Gordie Tumilson joining the show next. Gordie Tumilson joining this edition of the Buffaloes podcast. Gordie, lots to talk about in this episode today, but I feel like I haven't done this in a while, just simply asking you how things are with you. How have things been going on Gordie Tumilson's end of things with Pilot Mound?
Well, the Gordie Tumilson. Well, I haven't had to travel out to Pilot Mound. There's no blizzard recordings for me at all. That's been a bonus, although I miss the kids. I really do. I picked up some extra teams in Winnipeg to coach, so I get my kid fix along the way. But at the end of the day, in fact, I got my kid fixed. I'm wearing my brand new Winnipeg Jets alumni hat, which I was given today, and I was able to use it while I was helping tie skates at the Winnipeg Jets Hockey Academy at 10 o'clock this morning. A bunch of school kids come from the inner city, and True North Sports and Entertainment puts this on for the whole winter. I mean, these kids come there once or twice a week, and they're there for the whole winter, and it's wonderful. They have coaches, and it's a great time. I'm too old to be on the ice, so I can't keep up with the little ones. So they get me to tie skates and help out around the dressing room. But lots of fun today.
There you go, Gordie. Throwing it back to the Timbits days, right?
Oh my gosh.
Time your kid skates. I'm not sure if your kid played hockey or not, but I'll never forget the moments when the parents used to come into our dressing rooms and tie up the skates. Quite a bit of nostalgia you bringing that up, but yeah, it was a busy weekend in the academy. There was some travel involved for some teams in the academy. One of them in the Pilot Mound Hockey Academy Buffalo's U18 female prep squad, who ended up coming down to Winnipeg to play in the Female World Sports School Challenge. Gordie, they came away with two wins, one of them in a shootout, fell to both MFHL teams that they ended up playing, I guess, this past week of action. But yeah, the assessment from the U18 females weekend where they were able to get some wins, but fell short in the end.
Yeah, a couple of wins, couple of losses, and not unexpected. That's about where we're at, and good hockey games. I mean, in all games, the two losses were in going in the third period, where I think we're 1 and 2 goals difference, and then they kind of split up a little bit. The Avros took advantage of some things that we were doing wrong in the third period and got us, but everybody else, it was good hockey. We knocked off the Thunder Bay Queens for the fifth time in a row. So there you go. They beat us 4 times in a row, and we beat them 5 times in a row since. So that was all kinds of fun. But yeah, it was good hockey and good to be in watch the kids in Winnipeg for a change. It was lots of fun.
Yeah, and for Manitoba overall, it was a pretty successful weekend. I mean, all Final Four teams were Manitoban, and I mean, Pilot Mound, knowing that RHA is such a big rival, I'm not sure if that might have put a smile on some kids' faces, knowing that RHA fell to the Winnipeg Ice in the final, unable to go back to back. But we spoke about it last week. This AAA league, Gordy, kind of underrated at points compared to, maybe the CSSHL overshadows it due to how that league's been growing. But for this CSSHL team and the Buffalo's U18 female preps to get two good tests against two high quality MFHL AAA opponents. How huge is that to take that away from what they learned from this weekend from playing against them?
Oh, sure. Well, it shows that first of all, hockey in Manitoba is at a pretty high level, and that's really neat. You don't we're not just playing schmucky hockey here. We're doing pretty good, and I'm proud of all the girls on all the teams for doing what they do. I mean, I'm a hockey guy. I'm not, I'm a Pilot Mound guy, but certainly I enjoy watching good hockey all day long, and the goalie the other end makes a big save. I'm not unhappy about that. I mean, we like to see our guys score, but wow, the goalies play good. So I'm a hockey aficionado, I guess it would be the word if you had a dictionary handy. But at the end of the day, good hockey for our guys to play, meaningful, lots of people watching, lots of scouts watching, and that's what the girls are looking forward to. If they put on a good show, maybe someone will catch their eye, and a college somewhere in Canada, the U.S. will like them and maybe offer them an opportunity to go to school there.
Oh, for sure. And tournaments like this, playing in showcases like this, could potentially certainly open up the door. And hey, for the Buffaloes, from a team perspective, they finished off their tournament strong with a 2-1 victory over the Sherwood Park Reign team back on the first day of this month in February. The U18 female prep Buffaloes going to be back in action next weekend coming up. But Gordy, we'll go into, let's see here, the U15s taking a look at their past weekend of action. They ended up taking on RHA Winnipeg in a lone game in Winnipeg at RHA Training Center, I guess, in Oak Bluff.
Yep.
And that one, there were some goals put up from the Buffaloes, but overall, not the outcome they would have wanted. Take me
Yeah.
through their matchup against RHA, always a quality opponent.
Yeah, well, the game started off an unfortunate incident. One of our players was knocked unconscious in the first shift of the game, and so it was a fairly lengthy delay. The ATs were right there right away, and all that good stuff. And the ambulance was there in 12 minutes. But they're very precautionary. The player is fine, going through protocol as far as I know. He's fine, and again, he's going through concussion protocol, and he was home that night. So Um, I know our kids were thrown off. I mean, we had one of our better players hurt, and that throws anybody off. Talking at our goalie meeting last night and before with Gavin Hildebrand, who was the starter in our game, he was a bit shaken, and because you don't know, those kids come back on the ice 30 minutes later. They get sent into the dressing room right away. They come back on 30 minutes later, their player friend is gone and they don't know what's really happened. They get some kind of a word that he's okay and he's awake and moving all his parts, but at the end of the day, you're not really sure, right? So that throws a young guy, throws everybody off. I had a dozen or more calls from people watching the game on Flow TV or at the rink asking how this player was, and so it was, hockey cares, and so it was so our guys were a little bit shaken. We played not badly the first two periods, got a little bit thrown off in the third. But anyway, at the end of the day, it was a good game and cleanly played from, right from the start to the finish. That wasn't a dirty play. So, we played the game, went home, and put that behind us, and our players in good shape today, I think. So that's the good news.
Well, great to hear that. Health is first and foremost the most important thing over everything. Like at the end of the day, Gordie, once this game is up for, the kids in the academy that are playing it now, all you got is your health and what comes after that, right? And your health being a huge part of it. And shout out to the team that was able to do their due diligence in terms of the paramedics and everyone that helped get, of course, Pilot Mound's player that ended up being injured. We're not going to say who it is out of respect for him, of course, but yeah, I couldn't even imagine Gordie, especially being as young as these U15s are, seeing something like this that they probably haven't ever experienced in their life. I'm not sure many people do go through that. It's just freak moments, freak experiences that happen in sports. But just some advice, I guess. You said you were able to have a talk to, your goalies about it a bit, chatting to them about it. But your message to just players, parents, everyone overall, I guess players first and foremost, since it affects them, how they could simply handle situations or try to handle them as best as possible in this case.
Well, I think talking about it's the biggest thing. I think, and we, that Bell talk thing and the mental illness things, and we know with our parents, if we don't talk about stuff, and they don't know what's going on, they need to know, and so it's a good idea to talk to coaches and coaches, and we all know that as adults, we all know. I think we all know that, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but. On the protocols and stuff, but it's one of the things we do. We talk to the kids, make sure they feel comfy and that they realize what's going on, and we try and give them as much information as possible. Of course, we're in the information age, and this texting, phone calls, it's instantaneous, and so when they don't know something, that throws children off worse today probably than it did 40 years ago, because you knew that you had to have patience back then because information wasn't that readily available. It would be next day. Somebody had to mail you a letter to tell you what was going on, let alone make a phone call or catch you at home. So it was a wholly different world. And, we respect all of that. And so talking about it's important, and assuring people. And again, I'll talk about some of the things that we do later on on that side of things. But yep, it's important to get the kids and make sure that they feel comfortable with what they saw, and how they might handle it, et cetera, et cetera. And we stick with them beyond the moment. It's days later, it's days later or even weeks later that sometimes they need a little bit of help. So we keep an eye on them.
Right, no doubt about it. And I think that's great, right? The open communication, just simply being there for the players and, serving as, the responsible adults in the room, Gordy, and, knowing that you have those years on the players to, showcase their maturity, these
Hmm.
individuals in this instance. Great to hear how this whole situation has been handled. Something that, you never like to see happen, but unfortunately, every once in a while, an injury like this could possibly occur. It's a fast-paced moving game, Gordon. I mean, you know this
Hmm.
better than anyone, and the game's only getting quicker too. So, yeah, prayers up to the Pilot Mound player, of course, who, sounds like they are recovering in good spirits and in good health right now. Gordie, for this U15 squad, they're going to be back in action coming up on Friday against OHA, Edmonton, Notre Dame, as well as Ed. So, I guess coming off of such an emotional whirlwind like that game against RHA Winnipeg, how do you feel like the coaching staff will be handling the preparation heading into this week? Back to normal, or maybe handling things a bit differently?
No, it'll be back to normal. We got a player that's not going to play in those games, so that's you got to move players around a little bit of the jigsaw puzzle maneuver. But beyond that, no, I think they'll just go back to work and try to put it behind them and go out and play like everybody else does. You just you play the game. It might be in the back of some of the kids' minds, and some of the they're young guys and the young people, and so so there might be a little more fear in some of the players, and so they got to get over that and whatnot. But you learn from these experiences as a player, as a coach, as a parent, all these kinds of things. So it'll be monitored. We'll monitor everybody, make sure they're comfy. But I think for the most part, the kids will be able to put it behind them and go out and do their best for their buddy.
Yeah, I'm looking for big performances against OHA, Notre Dame, and Edge School, as it'll be a 3 game and 3 day weekend for Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy down in Devon, Alberta. Gordie, we're going to throw it to a quick little break here. We'll hit a transition and we'll be back to talk about the U18 male prep buffs as well as the U17 male prep buffs coming up next on this edition of the Buffaloes podcast with myself and Gordie Tumilson. Welcome back to this edition of the Buffaloes podcast with myself, Graham Forsyth, and our guest, our weekly guest, Gordie Tumilson. We've talked about the U18 female preps weekend in Winnipeg for the Female World Sports School Challenge, as well as the U15 male preps. One game which we of course talked about some serious stuff in terms of injuries. Might touch on that at the end of this episode or this segment with Gordie. So you may have some final words on that, on injuries in general. But let's talk about U17s took on OHA Edmonton. Didn't go as planned on the scoreboard for them. Gordie, they were coming off of a 5-3 victory against them on January 26th in their most recent matchup before this back-to-back weekend of home games for the Buffaloes. OHA had their number in both games, Gordie. Take us through, I guess the weekend in terms of the scoreboard specifically of disappointment for Pilot Mound, but was there anything they could look at and, come away as maybe being proud of certain things in their game from this past weekend despite the 2 losses?
I think we got off on a slow start in the first game, and then everybody sort of held the fort. So I think it was like 3-0 early or in the first period, and then it was like 1-1 the rest of the way. And so we're capable of playing in that U17 team with some of these big strong, I call them WHL, farm teams. Um, and so, yeah, our guys played well. Our goalkeeper has come off a couple of games that he wasn't comfy with. He sort of brought himself back together, even though it was a bit of a slow start for the team. He himself played pretty darn well. And so, yeah, we played good. Unfortunately, we came a little bit flat the next day. And if you don't play as hard as you can, as well as you can against those kinds of teams that come out of Alberta and BC in particular, you get into trouble, and we got into trouble. They're pretty darn good. If you take too many penalties, they backdoor you to death, and they do that really well. So yep, it was one of those weekends where again the players themselves, individuals shine. Unfortunately, if someone breaks down somewhere, we may not be capable of picking up the loose end and doing anything with it. But uh, good hockey, clean hockey, and tough hockey. So the kids are learning, and that's the main thing.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, looking at OHA Edmonton, this is a team that, of course, ranks top 4 in the standings, right? So this is no pushover. And given that, I mean, Pilot Mountain isn't going to be facing off against these teams, but I'm sure they've learned this lesson along the way. You got to play hard to be able to give your chance in any game, no matter if it's the top teams or the bottom teams. Given that they're going to have a chance to play against another top team coming up, a sixth-ranked RHA Winnipeg team, knowing that maybe you won't win on the scoreboard, but building good habits heading into their consolation playoff bracket, I'm sure that's one of the big goals for this team moving forward, is it not?
Oh, absolutely. Well, we're trying to win every game, by the way. I mean, we're not that
Course,
we,
of
but
course.
the expectation is we go out and we try and win. If you get a big game from the goalkeeper, and as we did last weekend with Matty Palmer, and when we beat the OHA, then coming up this weekend with RHA, I mean, you're just trying to get everybody to play as well as they can, as best they can. And if things work out, you squeak out a win. If you don't want to lose by a bunch. You want to be close, and you want to learn some things, and you want to feel like you're getting better and closer to those good teams and the way they play, so you know that there's progress being made. And if you feel that there's progress, that's all you can hope for sometimes. And there's nothing wrong with that. Even the top teams look for progress because no one's perfect.
No, no doubt about it, right, Gordon? And that's what the regular season's about. It's about perfecting that process as best you can until playoffs hit, which is coming up soon here for Pilot Mountain Hockey Academy as we take a look at their schedule. Not many games left for them, only six left on the schedule. Next one up this weekend coming up on the 8th and on the 10th against RHA Winnipeg. Guess a Monday game in there, Gordie, since the 9th being Sunday. As for the U18 prep male Buffaloes, we'll finish off with them before we get into some final words here on this segment. But they were in action against OHA Edmonton, as well as, yeah, OHA Edmonton the day before on January 31st. A closer game to end things off against that squad. Didn't start off as well for the U18s, but yeah, speak about, I guess, the character they showed throughout this past weekend to play against a good OHA Edmonton squad.
Yeah, another one of those dub organizations that comes at you with everybody that they've selected for the next 4 years to play with the Oil Kings or some other junior program. Anyways, no excuses. Our guys aren't there yet, but they're getting there. And unfortunately, and to his credit, Aiden Trapp, our goalkeeper, got sick just prior to the game. He was not feeling well. He tried to go out and play, and things didn't go his way. It wasn't his fault. And yet, when you're not quite there and you're not quite, the whole thing kind of fell apart. He got taken out of the game a bit early. He's been down since that moment when he got taken out. He's been down and out. So he hasn't been well. He even missed the goalie meeting yesterday, which is, highly unusual for our goalies. So they just enjoy listening to me blather on for, 40 minutes. I'm just kidding, by the way, when I say that. I'm hoping for a smile there, Graham. Anyway, yeah, Aiden wasn't foul. So Tate Sanchez, our other goalkeeper, the guy from Chicago, he went in and played basically 2 3/4 games and enjoyed himself, made a lot of saves, and that's what it was all about for him. We kept the game a little bit closer in the second one, it's all feel good when we can stay with these guys because we know the talent they've got, and we know how hard we have to work to be close to them, and our kids did that on Sunday, so it was a good deal.
Yeah, and for this OHA Edmonton team, a team that's above 500, this Buffalo squad near the bottom of the standings. So I mean, given that this team going through a bit of adversity, right? Knowing that, I mean, one of their brothers unable to go in Aiden Trap, and yeah, to just come back from a game before where they gave up quite a bit of goals against, happens to be a shootout of a matchup the next game. But knowing that you could be close with a team that, kind of clocked you the day before speaks volumes once again about teams in the academy having resiliency, specifically this U18 prep squad.
Yep, and it builds character if nothing else. And it's frustrating when we don't win. We know that, and we know everybody gets frustrated. But kids, the parents, the coaches, the bus drivers, everybody, the cook staff, dormitory people that look after the parents in the dorms and supervision, and everybody's disappointed. But we know the players are trying hard and they're getting better, and we'll see a bunch of those kids. Getting close now to the end of the season, and all of a sudden junior hockey teams are starting to knock on the door and say, hey, what about this guy? What about that guy? So even though the team doesn't win as many games, the players have performed better and well, and good scouts can find a good player here and there when they pay attention. So that's what good scouts get paid for.
Well, I'm sure there could be a few scouts, maybe some out at Blackjack Stewart Arena coming up next weekend, as this team going to be playing against two top five teams, twice against Calgary International Hockey Academy, and then their first game of the weekend to open up against Edge School. Those games all going to be at Blackjack Stewart Arena, can all be seen on Flow Sports on Flow Hockey. Gordie, we'll get into those next week. We're going to finish off this segment at this point for this edition of the Buffaloes podcast. Before we do that, though, you wanted to speak more about injuries. Not sure where exactly you want to take it, but yeah, give our viewers some final insight on the point you want to make before we end things off.
Yeah, I think it's important for folks out there, parents, players, families, fans, anybody who's watching this stuff, scouts, that the league, the teams all take the injuries and not getting hurt, safety precautions, etc., equipment, all those things. They take them very seriously. And if someone does get hurt, there's a lot of follow up. But first of all, there's an assessment. We have an athletic therapist on the bench. On one bench at least, and both benches most of the time, so that there's immediate help for anybody who's gets knocked here, gets knocked there, gets a cut or something. There's immediate help, and they're looked after. Of course, there's hospitals and there's all kinds of other things that come into play at some point. Our injury on Sunday, the ATs were on the spot within seconds. And the second AT was on the spot within seconds after that. And the ambulance was called, and the ambulance was there, and the arena staff were right there. And so things were, there's a protocol, and there's things that happen, bing, 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 bing. And so from sitting watching, because the camera was stayed on the player, and I'm not sure that's right, but at the end of the day, that's what happened. So, we were able to kind of keep an eye on things. All the other players went away into the dressing room. And then the ambulance does a very careful job of moving people around that may have a head, neck, or back injury. And so all these things were looked into. The mother of the player was on the ice, which was a good thing that she was able to kind of be there for that and right through the process. And so we just try really hard from an organization and from a league and from people with a heart and people who care, that all of these things are in place. So if there is an injury, things are looked after, and there's a ton of follow up after a player goes home or whatever. So, and they don't go back on the ice until everybody's comfy with the progress that player's made. So it's really different than my play, because the coach would, in our day, coach would tell you walk it off. If you could stand, if you could walk it off at the end of the day. So, I'm not sure that everything was done perfectly in this situation, because I'm a spectator watching from a TV camera, but I know that everybody's trying to do exactly the right thing in exactly the right way. And I think for the most part, that's what happened. So good on the system to work when it gets called upon.
Yeah, and I guess I'll end off with a quick thought here. But great that they let players' mother onto the ice. Of course, sometimes I don't know if that might not be able to happen, but in this case, I mean, in the circumstances, I think that's great what they were able to do. I won't go into as
Nope.
much of
Nope.
We'll hold it there, Gordie. Gordie Tumilson joining this edition of the Buffaloes podcast. Thanks for the time as always, Gordie.
Thanks, Graham.
Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, the Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store. And welcome back to the Buffaloes podcast. Gordie Tumilson joining this edition of the podcast to talk about the many things we discussed. Happy to hear that player who ended up getting injured for Pilot Mound and not disclosing his name once again, out of respect for him and given that this player is a minor. I think that obviously, like Gordie said, not everything may be handled to the best of its abilities. I think everything was pretty much handled the best that the ATs could, the paramedics could. Shout out to them once again for coming through clutch and acting fast right away. The reason I wanted to say something in the end there was because it's just, we've seen players injured on our streams before in terms of our live hockey broadcasts, and we always turn away from the player and don't show them on the ice afterwards. So yeah, that was my only real gripe with what Gordie told me about. But yeah, great to know that it seems like Pilot Mound's U15 player who got into that serious situation is recovering and is on his way to making a full recovery and being in good health. So, shout out to everyone once again that helped out through that scary situation. It's the last we'll be talking about this topic today, by the way. We're going to be moving on now. Kirt Fortney is going to be joining the show next. But before we do that, some news to announce in terms of the top 5 scorers in both the U18 and U15 prep male divisions. We see Pilot Mound players both in these top 5s. For Cole Landerville, 1 point behind the U15 prep division lead with 57 points. And Austin Polanowski tied second in points in the whole U18 prep division. Shout out to Pilot Mound's U18 prep male Buffaloes captain and to superstar Cole Landerville of the U15 prep Buffaloes on cracking these lists. Back to school for the Buffaloes this week officially, as exams are officially over. Wishing and hoping the best for all the students that are going into, of course, the second semester in the school year. Best of luck to them the whole way through, of course. As for Addison Scoville, speaking of schools, she's committed to the Adrian Bulldogs to play ACHA hockey for the upcoming season. She comes from Coronation, Alberta, a defenseman for the past 2 seasons now for Pilot Mound Hockey Academy, taking her talents over to the ACHA. Congratulations to Addison on coming away with that recent commitment and setting up her future in the sport of hockey. As for potential future Buffaloes, evaluation camps will be starting in March and in April, as you can see there. Join the herd today by checking out Pilot Mound Hockey Academy's website to register at pilotmountainhockeyacademy.com today. Kirt Fortney joining the show next year. I was going to talk about the past weekend of action that his squad had. We're going to dive into Addison's commitment, as well as just talking about the journey recently for this team, how things have been going as the season's been going along since the last time we had Kirt here on the show, which was, I believe, back in November. Around then. You won't want to miss it here, coming up on the Buffaloes podcast next with the assistant coach of the Buffaloes U18 female prep squad, in Kirt Fortney, joining us here now. Pilot Mound Hockey Academy U18 female prep assistant coach Kirt Fortney joining this edition of the podcast as the second guest in this episode. Kirt, your team battled down in Winnipeg at the Hockey for All Center in the annual Female World Sports School Challenge. Came away with 2 wins, most notably winning the last game of your team's tournament in that consolation matchup against Sherwood Park, the Kings 2-1, and also winning against the Thunder Bay Queens team by a score of 5-3, a familiar opponent. But overall, had a chance to ask Gordie Tumilson about this past weekend. From your perspective, how you felt things went for this group.
I thought it was a pretty good weekend for the girls. A lot of confidence. We were in every game. Lots of shots on net. The first game against Yellowhead lost 3-0. Score a couple goals earlier in that game, or just get one on the board. I think that changes the way that game goes. They had a good goalie. It was hot at the right time, and we got lots of shots, lots of opportunities, hit some posts, and just couldn't find a way to score. So we were pretty happy with the way that game went. And then, next game against Thunder Bay, some team that was our ninth game of the year against them. So we were 4-4 up to that point. So that was the rubber match game, and they were able to battle through. Got behind, but then continued. Just believing in the system and playing how we were expecting them to play. And by the third, we were able to put some in the net and got some confidence. So that was a really good game. And then the Avros they're a really good team. Obviously, they're like first or second in the Manitoba AAA League, and we were right with them for the majority of the game. 10-minute lapse there in the third period where they scored a couple goals, and then that was out of reach. And then Sherwood Park, fair even game the whole way through, played well. We were out shooting them at times, outplaying them, doing everything right, getting little things, getting plays. So it's a good weekend overall. Good to have some success to build into this tough stretch that the girls have coming up here, and looking to carry that forward.
Yeah, and I think an interesting point, and of course, I don't feel like interesting may be the right word, but a good point that you bring up about this team's compete, and in terms of if this team wants a chance to have success, given maybe the challenge dispar or the talent disparities between them and other top end teams that compete, definitely would be huge if it continues to be consistent, and seemed like it was pretty consistent throughout all this past weekend at the Hockey for All Center. In that game against the Avros, though, knowing that you're able to stay with this team throughout the first, 40 minutes of it, giving up 5 goals in that third period of action, to lose it 7-2. Of course, like you mentioned, one of the top teams in the MFHL, a championship contender for sure, but coming back the next day and in a game where you're not advancing in the tournament, but you're playing for pride at this point, to win a close one against Sherwood Park, how do you feel like that maybe helps this team moving forward, knowing that the momentum was built right that way off the weekend?
Yeah, it's gonna, gives the girls confidence that they can compete with those high-end teams when they're doing the right things, and they don't any give up, or they're gonna fight right to the end, even if we get down a couple goals or whatever, or things aren't going our way, and we just hitting post and not scoring, to not give up, and that we're still gonna have a chance to win those games and to be in those tight games where that pressure is a little higher as the game gets going on. All those mistakes are more amplified, as you don't want to you don't get the puck out late in the game, then there's a chance to get scored on. So playing with that pressure is always good, and always good experience to have, to be able to do that, because sometimes it's just not something that's easy to replicate in practice, is that game pressure and that game speed as much, playing against each other in practice. But so having to do that a few times this weekend, and playing it like that, and then using that to build into this weekend with 2 games, and then a big Alberta stretch of games next weekend it was good for the girls.
Not playing against CSSHL teams, but all AAA teams this past weekend, with about 8 games left in the team's season until the playoffs start. Even though this Buffaloes team isn't going to be playing in the, top end division, going to be playing in the consolation bracket, how huge do you think it is to compete in the high end tournament like this against high end teams, given that playoffs is so close to this point in the season?
Yeah, I think it's good to be in those high end tournaments, and be able to compete and have you're playing for the Avros. We're going to the game. We had to because we lost our first game, we knew we had to win that game to have a chance to go to the semifinals, and they were giving it all and just had a little breakdown. So having that level of competition, which is going to be very similar to what playoffs are going to be. You win, you keep going on. You lose, you go home. So having that urgency to score and to keep it out at this time of year is good for the girls. There's still 8 league games left or something like that for them, so lots of time to change and then keep climbing so that when we hit the tier two bracket that we have a good showing and we're able to win it and be near the middle of the pack by the end of the season is kind of the goal we had coming back after Christmas. So we're on the right track and be able to do that would be great for the girls.
No, for sure. And I remember, I think I interviewed you shortly after the team's 4-0 weekend against the Thunder Bay Queens down at Blackjack Stewart Arena. And we had talked about how this team was really coming along and adjusting to, the systems in place. We're on quite a bit of a losing streak, heading into this weekend. Being able to finally snap that and get back into the win column only I feel like you mentioned, points to more confidence for this team potentially moving forward, knowing that they can go out and compete against high level teams, although not be it, the competition that they face most often than the CSSHL.
Yeah, this is for sure. I think since Thunder Bay, we've gotten our games now, even the ones we've been losing, where I think those games are just come down to, a couple mistakes here and there, and maybe not burying our chances on rebounds or putting the puck in the net when we get the opportunities. I think that's more the case now, where earlier in the season it was, not quite playing the systems or getting that full 60 minutes efforts. Now we're pretty consistent and getting close to that, 50 to 60 minutes efforts every game. It's just those few minute breakdowns against those high level teams where they're able to capitalize, or just a couple breakdowns against teams closer to our skill level that, they put the puck in the net and we aren't able to do the same. So, we just change those kind of once in a while, stay that focused, don't give up those one or two, and we score one or two more chances on the opportunities we're given. And the next thing you know, we're winning these games 5-3 or 3-1 or whatever it is. We're winning them by a couple and not on the other side. So, everything's going in the right direction and right at the time that you want to be hot going into playoffs. So a few more games left to continue that and then end the season off strong.
It's talked about so much in sports, right? Like gaining valuable experience through going through maybe the ups and downs of a season or going through maybe some heartbreak in the playoffs and learning to lose before you learn to win. Which this team has, some players that are going to age out, but quite a few players that are able to return coming into next season. A notable player in Shea Siemens, who is second in this team in points this year. So, given that we're getting into the home stretch of the season, this team played in a lot of meaningful hockey, specifically this past weekend in the Hockey for All Center in that tournament. Knowing playoffs is coming up, how huge do you feel like this next stretch is truly going to be for not only the group that's presently playing for the Buffaloes, but for the girls and for the future of this program in the next upcoming years that are potentially going to be here still?
I think it's yeah, huge. It's always easy to coach or play on a winning team because everything's going great and everything's awesome. And then, whenever you're on a team that's struggling or losing some games, it's really character building and how you respond to that and how you're able to move on and you're still able to go about your game and you're still able to compete and do the little things, even if times are going tough and your attitude on the bench and all those things are still great is what a lot of coaches and scouts are looking for, especially for the girls that are graduating or even Shay who's in grade 11 that colleges are now starting to take a look because as they're finishing out their commitments for this season, they're starting to look at they might want for next season. So they're taking a look at all of that. And for the girls coming back, this is good. Now we got Ryan and myself here for this year and then come back next year, that we got that base with them that they know what to expect. So when they start in October or sorry, August and beginning of September, that those girls are going to come in and be able to lead and know what the expectations are and only have to help those 5 to 7, however it may be, new girls to get it into expectations and how everything works around here. Where this year we were coming in and kind of having to start with all 20 of them. So that will help for next year and they'll know the systems and everything like that. So it'll make everything a little easier for the transition and help everyone with what they're wanting to do if it's for going to colleges and those girls moving up. So
Oh, for sure. And I mean, before we get into just the stability that you and Ryan are going to be bringing, returning for another season, as you know, you just said moments ago. But a player we just talked about, or you just mentioned, you know, colleges and universities and players getting to the next level. Shay already having some eyes on her, starting to take a look at her and seeing what she can truly do with her game. But for Addison Scoville, she's the latest commitment from this program, committing to the Adrian Bulldogs for next season. Talk about Addison. I mean, a player that's been crucial to this team's success since she's been here. And I'm sure has been a huge part of that dressing room as well. You know, I'm sure it was a huge moment when you found out the news as well as the rest of the team. For Addison, how proud are you of her of being able to, you know, make
oh
that commitment official?
yeah, it's great for her, like proud of how she's overcome everything, coming here last year and then going through her injuries with her shoulder over last season and not being able to play to her full capabilities and you know rehabbing that and training throughout the summer to get that strengthened up that she can play every game this year. There's still games where you can watch once in a while and she's coming off and she's in a little bit of pain, but she's managed how to handle that and how to get that physio to get it back to where she can play every game. Seeing how she's handled that, how she's handled being a leader on the team, grade 12 year, helping the younger girls, having that voice in the locker room, being a leader on the ice, always working hard in the gym, setting a good example for everyone, getting good grades in school, getting her stuff done, being super helpful with everyone and having a positive attitude and helping everyone else out even when times have been tough and keeping strong through that has been awesome. And because of that, she's been able to commit to Adrian, which I'm sure she's going to do great there and excited to see what she can do there. There's a few other grade 12s that we're just finalizing some details on their commitments. So those hopefully will be coming out soon. So, all the grade 12s are, it's awesome to have them that they're able to mentor those younger kids, the grade 9s and 10s on the team and provide that leadership support to the grade 11s who we then hope to next year that those grade 11s move on and they are exactly the same as the grade 12s and the leaderships this year. So having that has been awesome and extremely proud of all of her accomplishments that Addison's done and looking forward to the other ones when they become official as well.
Yeah, and for Addison from Coronation, Alberta, going to be an Adrian Bulldog come next season in her final year with Pilot Mound Hockey Academy. We'll end off with this. Kirt, the upcoming matchups for this team this weekend going to be going up against stiff competition as this team has for most of this season in the CSSHL, playing against teams like, as we pull up the schedule here just to officially confirm the dates and times. This Friday against Balmoral Hall, a home game, as well as taking on St. Mary's Academy the next day, 3 p.m. for that game at Blackjack Stewart Arena, as well as 7 p.m. the night before in that matchup against Balmoral Hall. As Noticing my camera going blurry. As we try to fix that, though, Kirt, just how this team is, I guess, handling the preparation. I know a lot of skating as always, but anything in particular you're looking at in film of these two teams coming up to try to get any advantage this team can against two highly skilled squads?
Uh, right now, like we've played both those teams a couple times already, so we kind of know what they're about and know who we need to watch when they're on the ice. Right now, there's been kind of a sickness going around through our team and actually throughout all four teams in the dorms. So not doing as much full practicing right now. It's more important is to get that rest and recovery as opposed to getting those extra reps in. 'Cause just want to get everyone to be 100% for this weekend, and then on Monday we leave for Alberta for 5 games in 7 days or something like that. So big games there, but these are last two home games. So Saturday will be senior night for the girls, so there'll be some emotions there and wanting a good showing for them. Balmoral, we've played a couple times, had some close games with them, one at home and one in last month in Winnipeg. So hoping to continue off that and just eliminate a few of their scoring chances and scoring on a couple of ours. And I think we are it's a great chance to win that game. St. Mary's is we've beat them once in overtime already, so they're a very strong and structured team. So we just have to come ready to work against them and capitalize on our opportunities. I think it's very much the same. It's nothing special, I think, between each team. At this point, it's our team doing the little things that we need to do and competing, and then scoring on our opportunities is going to be the key to winning both of those games.
Yeah, and Pilot Mound made history by beating St. Mary's Academy for the first time in their program's history, 2-1 back on December 4th, 2024. Looking to battle through an illness right now. A lot of players in the academy, all the teams being affected, as Kirt mentioned, hoping that this team can battle through to give both these teams competitive battles this upcoming weekend. And yeah, the fun then begins coming up shortly here, starting on the 11th for this female prep Buffalo squad as they'll play 5 games in 5 days, which is pretty crazy. Not quite on the level of the U18s, but pretty darn close. The U18 male prep Buffaloes as they played like 7 games or 6 games in 6 days earlier this year. Anyways, Kirt, I'm gonna let you go. Of course, I know you're a dorm parent, of course, so you got some responsibilities and stuff to take care of before tonight ends. But want to thank you for coming on the show as always and being a guest on the Buffaloes podcast. Best of luck this upcoming weekend and moving forward into the playoffs this season.
Perfect. Thanks for having me, Graham.
Always great to talk to assistant coach of the Pilot Mound Hockey Academy Buffaloes U18 female prep squad and Kirt Fortney. They're coming off of a weekend where they ended up winning their last game of it against the Sherwood Park Reign from Alberta. Ended up falling to both MFHL teams that they played in the Winnipeg Avers and Yellowhead Chiefs. And, I think that this tournament showcases just how strong the U18 female league is, the AAA league, with 3 out of the 4 Final Four teams being from that league in the Winnipeg Avros, Winnipeg Ice, of course, who ended up winning the championship over the defending champion RHA Winnipeg squad, and the Westman Wildcats, who ended up losing in the bronze to the Avros, but made it to the semifinals and the Final Four. As for this Buffalo squad, though, I think there's a lot to build off of this weekend, right? You didn't go up against CSSHL opponents, but you went up against very good AAA opponents, and I think there's a lot that they could take away from that weekend and look at and dissect that could help benefit them down the way here as, it's going to be a very competitive weekend, hopefully, for the U18 female prep Buffaloes. We'll get into their schedule in just a moment. Just one last reminder of the evaluation camps that are going to be starting in March as well as in April, the second half of them. Join the herd today by checking out pilotmounhockeyacademy.com to register if you are a player that fits any of these categories, these age groups, and potentially you want to take your talents to small town Pilot Mound to play CSSHL hockey for the next season. This could be your chance, as they'll have their eyes on you if you end up making it to these evaluation camps. As for the schedule for this upcoming weekend, 4 teams in the academy, just to reiterate, the U15 is going to be on the road in Devon, Alberta, to take on teams like the Notre Dame Hounds, OHA Edmonton, and Ed School. Coverage will all be seen on Flow Sports. As for the male U17s, we're going to be playing in 2 games, one on Monday, one on Saturday, both against RHA Winnipeg and Oak Bluff, Manitoba. Coverage can be seen on Flow Sports, on Flow Hockey. As for the male U18 prep, Buffalo is going to be in action against Edge, as well as Calgary International Hockey Academy, 2 top 5 teams in the male U18 division, down in their home in Pilot Mound, Manitoba, Blackjack Stewart Arena. As all the other games for the previous 2 teams that we've just mentioned, it can be seen on Flow Sports. And as for the female U18 prep, Buffalo is going to be taking on St. Mary's Academy. But first, Balmoral Hall at home on Friday night. Both games going to be at home in Pilot Mound Hockey Academy, as the Buffaloes looking to get their first win of the season against Balmoral and looking to replicate their success from that 2-1 victory against St. Mary's back in December. Coverage can be seen, like all the rest of the matchups we just talked about, on Flow Sports for the female U18 prep Buffaloes. We're going to have more news from around the academy next week, more breaking down past games and previewing upcoming games, and more guests coming up in next episode, as we're hoping to get some players on the show. February continues to roll along here, as we're coming up fast, I feel like, on midway of the month already. But as for right now, on February 5th, on this Wednesday morning, Buffaloes Nation, we're going to hit one last commercial here, hit a transition, then I'll be back for some final words on this edition of the Buffaloes podcast, the official Pilot Mound Hockey Academy podcast, here on G Show Productions on gshow.ca, your home for hockey in Manitoba in 2024-2025. Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools has been the place to shop for your industrial needs for over 20 years. Carrying the tools you need to get the job done from the brands you can trust, Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools has you covered. Brands like Milwaukee Tool, established in 1924 and on display in our Milwaukee Red Zone, the largest red zone in Winnipeg. With construction workers and tradespeople in mind, Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools is your one-stop shop for all your industrial needs. So come on down to our Winnipeg store location today, located on 1557 King Edward Street in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And welcome back to this edition of the Buffaloes podcast for episode 20, season 2. You've made it to the end of this one, Buffaloes Nation. I've been your host, Graham, the G Show Forsyth. Special thanks to Gordie, Tumilson, as well as Kirt Fortney coming on this episode and being episode 20, season 2's guests, as well as a special thanks to our sponsors, Interico Goaltenders, Mid-Canada Fasteners and Tools, and Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia for sponsoring another edition of the Buffaloes podcast. Next episode comes out next Wednesday at 8 a.m. We'll have a full guest list for you coming out just before that episode, or rather maybe even on Tuesday night next week on our social media pages, as well as on our website at gshow.ca. Also, speaking of the folks who ended up watching this episode, thank you for tuning in. If you are new here, be sure to consider leaving a like to help get this content seen by more people here on YouTube. Liking the video always helps that scenario. If you enjoyed this content and want to stay up to date with when future episodes come out, you can of course check us out on our social media pages as well as on our website to check the schedules, but you'll get notifications when episodes like this come out if you do end up subscribing to our YouTube channel. And we got plenty more great content coming out the rest of the week here. regular season weekend finale in the MFHL that we're going to be a part of, an MMJHL game day broadcast tomorrow. 3 more podcast episodes this week from the MMJHL podcast, the MFHL podcast, and the Manitoba Hockey podcast, where in the Manitoba Hockey podcast we're going to break down the Female World Sports School Challenge for one last time briefly, where we'll be touching on Pilot Mound just a bit. But until next Wednesday, for this podcast specifically, everybody, when we'll see you all again for episode 21 in season 2. I've been your host, Graham the G Show Forsyth, giving you the peace out and waving so long on this Wednesday morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Stay safe out there and warm as well if it's cold where you are. I know it's sure darn cold here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, where I reside. And yeah, enjoy all the great hockey coming your way as well this weekend, Buffaloes Nation. Tyson Unruh, we're going to send us off with his March of the Buffaloes theme. Take care, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Oh!